What are the pharyngeal arches? Simply, they are pairs of bumps or elevations appearing in the foregut region during the 4th week of development. They give rise to much of the face and neck. They are also called branchial arches, meaning gill arches in Greek, for they are the structures which become gills in fish. We are going to quickly outline the first 3 weeks of development to put the first pharyngeal arch in context. After conception, the zygote became a solid ball of cells, the morula. Then it developed a cavity and was called the blastocyst. The part that will become the embryo is called the inner cell mass. The rest will become supporting structures. Let's talk about the inner cell mass, the future embryo. During the 2nd week, the cells became arranged in a flat disc with 2 layers, and by the 3rd week the disc had differentiated into 3 layers. Thus, at the end of 3 weeks, we have a trilaminar disc with endoderm ventrally, ectoderm dorsally, and mesoderm sandwiched in between. Schematically, imagine that the disc bisects a sphere, creating the amniotic cavity above and the yolk sac below. This sphere is suspended within a larger one, the chorion, via the connecting stalk. At 21 days, it is still just a dot implanted in the uterine wall. During the 4th week, the disc folds in 2 ways simultaneously, via longitudinal and lateral folding. With lateral folding, the sides of the disc fold under to form the gut tube and body wall. Notice that the heart tubes are on the wrong side of the brain at 21 days. With longitudinal folding, the heart is folded down. That is, it moves caudal to the brain. By the 24th day or so, the 1st and 2nd pharyngeal arches appear as pairs of elevations. A day or 2 later, the 3rd pair of arches appear, and the 4th pair is visible about a day after that. The 5th and 6th arches soon develop and fuse with the 4th arch. Often the 5th arch doesn't develop at all. Notice that the 1st arch is a double bump, a 2-part bump. These parts are called the maxillary and mandibular prominences, which give rise to the upper and lower jaws. So what we've got are a left and a right mandibular prominence and a left and a right maxillary prominence, all making up the 1st pharyngeal arch. Each pair of pharyngeal arches is nourished by a corresponding pair of aortic arches. The aortic arches are arteries branching from the 2 dorsal aorta. Eventually, these aortic arches become the major vessels of the neck and trunk, but for the most part, the 1st and 2nd aortic arches disappear. Each pharyngeal arch is innervated by a separate cranial nerve. The 1st arch is innervated by cranial nerve 5, a 3-part nerve, also called the trigeminal. The 2nd and 3rd divisions of the nerve innervate the maxillary and mandibular prominences of our 1st arch, and all structures which derive from them. Now let's look at the embryo face to face and zoom in still further on the 1st arch. If the pharyngeal arches are likened to hills, imagine the valleys between them. The valleys are called branchial grooves, and the 1st branchial groove is located between the 1st and 2nd arches. Directly opposite the 1st groove, there is a pouch, which is simply an outpocketing of the gut tube. This is the 1st pharyngeal pouch. The area of contact between the outer groove and the inner pouch forms a membrane. This entire structure develops during the next few weeks into the ear. The groove and surrounding ectoderm give rise to the external ear. The membrane becomes the tympanic membrane, and the pouch becomes the middle ear cavity and auditory tube. The bones which derive from the 1st arch cartilage are 2 of the 3 tiny bones of the middle ear, the malleus and the incus, as well as the upper and lower jaws. Let's return to our embryo, which is still 28 days old, and follow its development through the 5th, 6th, and 7th weeks. Notice that the lens placodes are initially located on the sides of the head, fish style. They move front and center during these weeks. The eyes are not derived from the 1st pharyngeal arch. However, Most of the nose is. It starts out in two pieces, called nasal placodes, which migrate towards each other and then fuse. Let's stop here at the end of the 7th week and take a trip into the embryo's mouth.
Hey, it's dark in here.
We're inside the mouth looking up towards the nose. Right now there's nothing separating the nose and mouth, but luckily the embryo is building a palate. The mound here was formed by the fusion of the two parts of the nose. It is the primary palate. We can see that the primary palate is incomplete in separating the nose and mouth. The secondary palate grows in from the insides of the maxillary prominences to finish the job. While we're here, we can't help noticing the tongue, which started as swellings around the end of the 4th week. The first arch is chiefly responsible for the anterior 2/3 of the tongue, and the 3rd and 4th arches give rise to the posterior 1/3. Thus, only the anterior 2/3 of the tongue gets a branch of the trigeminal nerve, the nerve of the first arch. Hey, kid, are you okay?
Oh, terrific.
All right. Let's get this face into shape, starting again with the 8th week. By the 14th week, the fetus no longer looks like such a monster and is about 5 inches long. From the first arch mesoderm, 8 muscles are derived, 4 of which are the muscles of mastication. All of these muscles are innervated by the trigeminal nerve, but the muscles of facial expression aren't. They're derived from the 2nd arch and are innervated by the facial nerve. Let's run through the whole metamorphosis of the face again from the beginning of the 4th week.